Okay, how is it going? Sleepy? Please welcome on stage to Indrek Vainu. He's going to talk about this super cool bot technology, artificial intelligence. Welcome on stage.
All right, thank you. So it's good to be here and talk about our super awesome company. So my name is Indrek. I'm the co-founder at CartSkill. We are a startup company based here in Tallinn, and we have been working with artificial intelligence and in text and image analysis, and now are working with bots. So I'm happy here to talk about this to you guys, and also thanks to the organizers for this. I had soup over lunch. It was amazing. So I don't know if you guys had it, but that definitely made my day. Better lunch than at most conferences, so keeping the people happy. What I'll do is because like bots are sort of a new trend in the world, though they're not that old. So I'll cover it from like the user experience point of view. I'll talk a bit about like why they are relevant now, what are some of the trends in Facebook that's ongoing. Then I'll talk about show some bots and talk about our experiences that we have learned from while we have built bots, then touch a little bit on the technical side, and then have a little crystal ball for the future as well. So like starting out, bots themselves really aren't anything new. So they're basically like an autonomous program that responds to certain user intent. So those that play games have used them for sure, and they have been around for quite a while. So in that sense, why are we talking about this now more? Though the topic of bots hasn't really caught up on like mainstream people's consciousness yet, but I predict it will do so quite significantly over the next half a year or a year. So basically, the underlying thing is like people love to text. Like that's how it's sort of the bots are having their renaissance moment. So like the guys in Finland who invented like SMS were like geniuses, because like that's what we all do all the time. And like this like WhatsApp is nothing new essentially. So what's like a couple of points from this slide which are key to understand is though the more vertical the line, like the more awesome it is. And so you see like WhatsApp having now basically more than 1 billion people using it. So that was January or February this year, they crossed that line. Messenger, that was spun out as a separate product from Facebook around 2013, now also crossed the 1 billion user mark in July of this year. So like people just love to text one another. They love like texting even more, they love calling, right? So then you look at like other social networks like LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, and those get used as well, but the usage is not so heavy because the focus is different. Like one is like professional networking, and the other is like sharing cute pictures of the soup that you ate during lunch, or your cat or your dog, or you and your cat showing it to your dog, like whatever. So the messaging app really are exploding, right? And another curious thing to notice is that WeChat is the equivalent of Messenger in China, and that actually has its roots not in 2012, not in 2013. So it's older and it's more developed. So what now Facebook is doing is that everybody's on it, like even people that maybe you don't want to talk to that much are on it, so you go to somewhere else, right? But they're trying to figure out ways like so where is this moving next, right? And so they look at WeChat, and what's happening there is that the chat has become so much more than just sharing emoticons or GIFs or like funny pictures of like you having beers in Tallinn last night. So in Korea you have Kakao, in Japan you have Line, and in China you have WeChat. And so how they all started out was that they opened up their APIs, and then you can develop some games to it, and you can develop some kind of very basic stickers and stuff like that. But fast forward in like 2015, WeChat has its bank. Like 2016, Line has its own debit card. So what starts out as a very sort of casual people chatting type of another app that now I use all of a sudden become so much more, and especially to transactions and businesses. So, now in WeChat, like you can book a time to see a doctor, you can order flowers, you can buy movie tickets, you can send money to your friends. So you can do all these things that usually you would like maybe go to some website or log into your bank or use, a browser, but now you can do it straight inside the messaging app. And so what Facebook now did is they opened the Messenger API in April of this year. And so they are playing catch up in this space. So they want to start offering all these functionalities that these people in Asia have already figured out. So WhatsApp has 900 million users, and basically for most people in China, it's the way that they access the internet daily. So this is sort of the trend where the messages is going. And if any of you are app developers, then apps are a tough business to be in. You can sure develop it, but there's 1 million apps. So how do you get found? Like each of us has around 30 to 35 apps on their phone. We spend 80% of the time on 3, maybe to 4 apps. And it's either a selection of Instagram or Snapchat or Spotify or SoundCloud or something like that, or Facebook or Messenger. So the new paradigm of essentially having apps within apps, which would make it bots, so to speak, is that instead of pushing your company out there on people's phones, rather have it as an account in Messenger so that people could actually chat with you right there because they hang out there all the time. And so, of course, there's a lot of hype to this. So I'm trying, even though we build bots, I'm trying to be unbiased. The people at Gartner, they know a lot about hypes and hype cycles. So if you look at this chart, you can see that the almighty machine learning is at the top, soon to plummet. Let's see how that goes. But you have conversational user interfaces that are just upcoming. So a lot of these buzzwords, it was like big data a couple of years ago, they come and go, and then they somehow become useful. So I would say that with bots, in many cases, it could be the same, but I'll go into some examples where they actually work pretty well in our case. So some few examples. So when Facebook launched in April, it was very new, so they partnered with CNN, and now when you open up your Messenger and you send a message to CNN, you can actually browse news. When you type in something like space, it gives you articles of space. When you type in Tallinn, it probably gives something about Estonia. Also, you can order flowers, so I put in, have them deliver the flowers to Kultuurikatel. They said, no, we can't do that. I said, that's a shame. But ideally, it's something that's very, very simple and easy to use. So these types of bots are out there. One of the better ones I've seen is actually it's called Swelly. It's basically like or not. You post a picture. If you don't know what to do with a certain outfit, or whether you like this porridge or that porridge or this meat or that meat, you post a picture, and then people can vote inside Messenger what you should choose. I tried it. There's a lot of interesting pictures out there that people have questions about. So feel free to. It was Swelly. Yeah, it was a pretty neat bot. So the opportunity is there to have these interactions with people, because why these bots are significant is that there's 1 billion people in Messenger, and right now they are just chatting among themselves, right? So if you have an idea for a product, or you have a business or a service, then it's a way to reach them. It's kind of like 2008, the Apple App Store is empty. There's 1,000 apps, and everything's is this going to grow? Yes, it's going to grow a lot. So the thinking with bots is that this will be somewhat similar. So when you think about bots, when I've, from the user experience point of view, is that when I tell people that now you can chat with a machine, then they say why would I do that? It feels so weird, right? So when you think about what makes a machine is when you consider this parking garage gate, it's just kind of like a dumb machine. You go there, you put in your ticket, and it opens up, and you drive away. So you never think to say oh, thank you, gate, for opening up. Oh, it's such a lovely day. Thank you, you're here and guarding my car. It's just, so it feels very ridiculous, right? And you might think that, the way people respond to bots, it's the same. It's just this dumb computer, and it's spitting out replies and all that. So what we did is now we have developed quite a few bots, and we've learned actually that the opposite is true. So we developed a bot called the Bus Bot. You can access it by messaging BUSSIBOT on Messenger right now. And what we found is that people love to chat to things that chat back. So they like really love it. So here's how it works. You type in the cities of like Tallinn and Pärnu, and it shows you the next bus departure times in Messenger. And then when you click on it, you can buy a ticket, right? The cool thing is that like people say thank you. And then we say you are welcome. And then they put a smiley and we show a smiley back. So technically, of course, it's like, okay, that's doable. But why would you say thank you to a machine, right? Like you don't thank the gate, but you thank a bot, right? And so you have people also asking like, are you my best friend? And we saw like a lot of people ask it, so we said, well, we are a good person, like we'll help you more than your neighbor perhaps. And then like we have the same thing for trains, it's called the train bot. So people say like, I'm off to catch a train, and then some people like put us through a Turing test, and they ask like, are you a bot? And then we say, well, that's a tough nut to crack. And then they ask like, are you a nut? And then we say, well, then our sort of wisdom, even in the AI field, runs out. And actually, these are sort of some of the examples that we've seen how people interact with bots. Like the weirdest ones, well, not weirdest ones, the most outstanding ones. We saw there was a guy who asked the bus bot out. So like, would you want to come out with me? And then like somebody asked like, are you really my best friend and better friend than Peter? And then we feel like, you know, we'll have to think about it. So we'll let you know. But there is this, for some reason, like what happens is that when you start talking to these bots, at first you might be skeptical and be like, oh, this is a machine, like why am I talking to it? But as you sort of talk to it and you get answers back, then you feel some kind of an appreciation towards it. And that's why I think like bots are pretty cool, is that you develop sort of affinity towards it, and it's nice to you. So when you think about it, like how many people like are actually nice to you? Like when you go buy a bus ticket at the terminal, like do they say like, oh, hello, sir, how are you? Good to hear. How was your day? Like, no, they just be like, 50 euros. You give the money, it's like, take off, right? But the bot says like, thank you, you're welcome, how are you? It makes you feel nice, and sort of that niceness is what, you know, it makes it the non-machine. And I think like this is, from the user interface point of view, a pretty interesting concept that we have seen that people love to chat with this. A lot of people swear a lot. I'm not going to go into that. I had a slide, I deleted it because I thought it's not going to be interesting. But then we don't swear back. We're sort of like kind of smart asses back to those people, and then they shut up because they see that the bot is sort of like fighting back. So there's that kind of communication going on as well. So the second thing from the user experience point of view is that the UI matters. This is an example of pretty a bad example of a user interface. So it's a shopping app that shows you some sort of hipster look for Monday, and I said, awesome, I also want to be a hipster, so I'm shopping for this look. And then what it does, it just like bombards me with ton of text, right? So a ton of text and stuff. And that's immediately the big turnoff for people, because like I'm not gonna bother reading all this chat type of stuff in Messenger when there's so much of it. So all the interactions that we have been getting is that people type in very few words, like only a couple of words, and what they expect is to see a very concise answer back. So they don't want to know about long sentences, they just want to see very clear-cut answers. And so from the fashion side, we're actually, what we did is we're using some of the deep learning that we have harnessed inside, is that for Monton, we launched their fashion store for women. It was the first store that was launched in Messenger in Europe in July. And basically, when you go to m.me/montonfashion, so these are the short URLs that actually trigger the fashion store right away, and you type in /shop-monton, so that triggers the fashion store. You get the designer picks for that month. And then when you click on items, you click on see similar, what happens is that we have analyzed that image, and then based on visual similarity, we are showing you similar images. So it's a lot of a lot of work on the back end that we're doing for it, but when you click on dresses, you see dresses, and it's not tagged or anything like that. So it's a way for people to actually consume products inside Messenger in a lot better fashion than just showing them a lot of category choices of like, do you like dresses or shirts or jackets? Yes, no, yes. Like, it's very difficult to use that type of user interaction in Messenger. And this type of just simple click works pretty well. And the third thing we found is that chat is this really like rapid fire environment. So people give about like 30 to 60 seconds to your bot. They try to Turing test it, so to speak. They write like ton of cities into it. They put like 5 likes in a row, and they just see like what happens. So when you answer something that's semi-intelligible, and they feel that this is an expected answer, then they are likely to come back. In many cases, what they do is they typing something, but the way they type it is very different from people to people. So what we are also doing is figuring out the actual intent of the person of what they are looking for. Because if you ask them too many questions, then the expectation is that they're not going to try to give you all the answers. So the attention span is really short. So the way is that you can use Messenger to actually turn it into a one-to-one communication platform. And so there's a lot of bot developer tools and frameworks out there. So platforms like Slack is one where we have built some bots. That's more for like team environments. Skype also has now one. Telegram has, but of course, like Messenger in the Western world is by far the biggest. So currently, what we are doing is developing bots for businesses for that platform. And now, when you talk about language analysis, then there's a lot of frameworks out there that try to make sense of the user intent. Because the way people ask things, they expect you to understand it. But of course, like AI is not that far developed that it actually has mastered any language. So it's still at a pretty rudimentary scale. And so Facebook itself has this wit.ai platform. So we played around with that one and the other ones as well. What we found is that these work sort of like black boxes. So they have a nice interface, and you train it, sort of you give some examples and you map out like what is what, and then it understands sort of the structure of the sentence. However, some of the responses that we got back were somewhat inaccurate. And because we have no control over the black box, it's very difficult for us to actually sometimes work with it. So we created our own text analysis platform where we use some statistical methods and also looking into the long, short-term memory networks to understand sort of the meaning and intent of the words in that language. If any of you wants to get started with bots, in a sense, it's relatively easy. All these frameworks are out there, and there's a lot of bots out there. Many of them are very, very sort of just people are trying out some stuff in very, very early stage. And basically, what our intent is in this world of bots, sort of thinking like how can we add the most value to users, and what we are doing is essentially taking the input from Messenger, taking that into our own platform, and then analyzing the intent of the user, so what the user actually wants, and then relating that with the answers that the company wants to present to people. Because it's mostly about information query, it's mostly about presenting relevant products, relevant services that people have an interest towards. And so some like parting ideas that I have put together is that the killer bot really has not emerged yet. And that might be for several reasons. So one is that the bot itself is just a new interface, how to interact with things. However, there has to be something behind it, right? So say you are this transportation company, and then you provide this way of finding the bus or tram or train times for people. That's actually highly relevant. When you are just thinking that, hey, I'm building a bot that gives you clever jokes, then yes, you can use it every once in a while, but most likely it's not that sticky. So the killer bot will emerge when it has something really sticky in it and people come back to it frequently. And that actually means that it has to have a service behind it. So let's say you have a service like maybe Uber or Airbnb or something like that that people use on a continuous basis. That is when something like that would emerge. The best bots actually solve a very specific user need. So what we found is that the train bot, we launched it, and we didn't put any well, as a startup, we don't have a lot of budget, so we didn't put any budget into it, just bootstrapped it. And then it just took off. I mean, so we have dozens and dozens of people using it daily. They're sharing, they're saying, like, this is awesome, like, you know, and it's just a word of mouth. And now people come back to it because it solves a very specific problem that they have. So they don't know when the train is going. It sounds very simple, but it's a very specific problem. If we had building a bot that now you can find out about transportation, then people will be like, and? So like, it doesn't really lead anywhere. So what we have found is that bots work best when they are focused on a very specific user problem. And it's so specific and so straightforward that they put in like a few words and then they get out the answer that they want. And we had some users actually, so they said like all this information is out there on the web. So like it's not that we are inventing, doing some total magic here. And they said, well, I just don't feel like going to a website. Like people are just like that lazy. Like if you can do this somehow automatically with like 5 letters or like 2 words that they put in, this is awesome, and they will stick around. So from the user experience point of view, like this simplicity is really what drives it. However, like when I think about like ordering a taxi, like would I do it in a bot? Probably not, because the app is better for that. So the app has a map, like I can pinpoint my location, it has my payments and stuff, and it works well. So there's definitely different types of categories where bots work better than apps, and then in some places where the apps themselves actually work better. But I think in general, the Botageddon or whatever they call it, there's so many buzzwords out there, it's crazy. I think like something's definitely happening, because when I look at what's happening in WeChat in China, it's a case that, you know, 900 million can't be wrong, in a way. Maybe like 890 million people can be wrong, but there's like 10 million who like are using it for a specific purpose. So I think those things we can transfer from there to here as well. And I'm sure like in the next, already this year and next year, we'll see a lot more interactions where you can start actually interacting with companies and products and services as bots, and you would get this type of experience. And the more you get to it, actually, the more you start appreciating the 24/7 availability, the always happy and positive. You can just vent out at the bot and it will say, you are a preferred customer, we love you back. And then you feel good about yourself again. So these things are probably popping up, and we are happy to be part of that and be part of that world and build that out. So with that, I thank you, and we'll take any questions if you have.
Okay.
So what kind of NLP services and tools have you used before you started building your own?
Kind of what?
What kind of natural language processing services have you used before you started building your own?
Yeah, so we used the with.ai, that was one. We used the API.ai. Didn't play around with Watson. So we used those, and some of the first bots we actually built on those. Well, what happens is that actually right now the with.ai has a bug and it's not functioning. So one of the bots that we built on it is not functioning. So we felt that we needed to have more control over that, and since we have that deep learning knowledge in-house, it made more sense to do it. Because so you want to sort of understand how how the user intent detection happens. So, you take the words, you break them down, you have some statistical methods, but then you want to go beyond it, and you actually want to start training it with some training data to make it more accurate, to understand like what actually the people want. But as a starting out, like I think the with AI is just the simplest way to move forward and try some bots.
Cool. Any other questions?
There's one in the front.
How many bots you use per day? You personally?
How many I use? So I use the train and the bus one for travel. When I have to buy like anniversary gift for my wife, I use the shopping one. I would need a better one on that because sometimes I misbuy stuff and I have to return them. So those are the ones. Swell is also the one just for pure entertainment purposes. But there aren't, let's put it this way, there aren't that many bots out there right now, period. So when you talk about because for Messenger, it's only, it's only 4 months old, and bigger companies like banks or taxi companies or things that you use frequently, it's just so new for them. But there's a great Facebook group on bots, which has like the latest bot developments out there, and like that's my main source of news right now for what's happening in the world of bots.
Like one more question. So if I want to bootstrap my own bot, let's say, out of these different boxes, what should I pick by default? Let's say like this.
I'd say just go for Messenger and with.ai. If you're doing something for companies, use Slack. But I guess, so Slack also, they have their own fund for bots, so you can build tools around that. But then again, I think that the cool thing is think about the use case. So what is actually very specific that people need to do? There's a lot of bots out there that are just sort of very vague and random, and people are just testing out. It's very natural. So like the first apps like were horrible. They didn't do much. But then you started having businesses around those apps that actually made it like, wow, now I can get a cab from my phone with an app. Like an app is actually a very useful thing. So I think we'll see some of that developments, and basically there's about like 10,000 developers developing bots for Messenger. So like somebody will figure out what it is. I don't know what it is, but hopefully we'll find out.
The stuff you showed was only pull. You won't ask Tallinn, Tartu, whatever. What happens when the bots start pushing stuff to me, like buy this or buy that?
Yeah. So currently, so I'm only talking about the Messenger platform. It's only customer pull. It's treated the way like SMS is treated. So the way that you start interacting with a bot is that you have to have intent. So you have to show up and say, hey bot, like give me some stuff, right? And when the bot gives you that stuff, then what happened was 2 weeks ago, Facebook, actually they made their terms a little more lenient, so that now you have a window where you can actually send a response back. So when I'm asking about Tallinn Tartu and I get the train times and I show up in Tartu, then what we could potentially do is actually then tell the person that, oh, have you checked out like, these hotels in Tartu? Previously you couldn't, but now the intent is that, businesses would want to have more to offer for people. But there is still a restriction on the amount of messages you can send and how frequently, because when it turns to spam, like it's this fine line between like monetizing users and spamming them, and you want to be very, very careful with that.
More questions? Okay, cool.
Thank you.